Some of gymnastics' biggest stars are on Capitol Hill to testify about former USA team Dr. Larry Nassar. He is accused of sexually abusing hundreds of gymnasts on Team USA and at the University of Michigan. But a new report from the U.S. Inspector General found the FBI did not open an official investigation until more than a year after the first abuse allegations were reported. His victims say the system failed them.
I am proud of my representation of this nation through gymnastics. I am also a survivor of sexual abuse, and I believe without a doubt that the circumstances that led to my abuse and allowed it to continue are directly the result of the fact that the organizations created by Congress to oversee and protect me as an athlete, USA Gymnastics and the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee failed to do their jobs.
The Senate is now looking into why the FBI failed to immediately investigate the claims against Nassar. CBS News' Skyler Henry has more.
Olympic champion Simone Biles, Allie Raceman, Michaela Maroney, and former gymnast Maggie Nichols all arrived on Capitol Hill to testify about the sexual abuse they suffered at the hands of USA Gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar.
To be clear, I blame Larry Nassar, and I also blame an entire system that enabled and perpetrated his abuse.
Congress is looking into why the FBI failed to launch an investigation into Nassar sooner. According to the Department of Justice's Inspector General, USA Gymnastics reported sexual abuse allegations against Nassar in 2015, but the FBI's Indianapolis field office failed to formally open an investigation. More than a year later, a separate sexual assault allegation was made against Nassar to Michigan State University police. Only then did the FBI investigate.
What is the point of reporting abuse if our own FBI agents are going to take it upon themselves to bury that report in a drawer?
The Inspector General says Nassar abused at least 70 more girls during that time. Sources tell CBS News that FBI Director Christopher Wray, who wasn't the director at the time, was outraged over the handling of the Nassar investigation. And we can also confirm that the agent who failed to launch that investigation has been fired. But attorney John Manley, who represents more than 200 gymnasts who say they were abused by Nassar, say that's not good enough.
It's unconscionable and it's wrong, and the people responsible need to go to jail.
Ray says he's implemented changes to Bureau policies and procedures to make sure future investigations are not hampered. Skyler Henry, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
To talk more about this, I'd like to bring in CBS News legal contributor Rebecca Roiphe. Hi, Rebecca. Great to see you. So the Department of Justice says the FBI didn't formally investigate sexual abuse allegations against Nassar until more than a year after, when more allegations were reported. What reasons would FBI investigators have for delaying this kind of a case?
Well, that's the most important question here. And Senator Feinstein raised this question and said, she asked the head of the FBI, Christopher Wray, does this show a failure on the part of investigators to take allegations of sexual assault seriously? And, that is a question that looms over this investigation. I think that the report that the Inspector General made shows that there were some kinds of failures that were, possibly had nothing to do with neglecting these kinds of allegations. The federal investigators were concerned that they did not have a jurisdiction over this case, and that makes sense because most sexual assault investigations and prosecutions happen on the state level. But there's another question that this all raises, which is why did they not then go immediately and report this to state and local investigators, leading us right back to Senator Feinstein's question. If they took this seriously, why didn't they at least ensure that somebody was looking into this if it wasn't their responsibility to do so?
So then when you sort of back up and look at where the major missteps happened throughout this investigation, are there fingers being pointed to one or two individuals? And then further, how will today's hearing address those missteps?
So I think it's a combination. I think there are one or two individuals who clearly made, at at best mistakes, at worst, were doing something, terribly wrong. And those two individuals are no longer with the FBI. One of them has been fired and the other one retired. So then the remaining question is, well, was it just these two bad apples? Was it just these two people who made mistakes? And it seems not. It seems that there were some kinds of systemic failures. And that's part of the end result of this investigation, is that those failures have been addressed and will continue to be addressed. You saw promises that the head of the FBI will ensure that these are not just empty promises, but that the department actually goes through and makes sure that they're implemented. For one, what I just mentioned, which is to make sure that if the FBI determines that there is no jurisdiction, that the proper state and local authorities are informed. Second of all, there was a kind of juggling between different offices. So is this the responsibility of Michigan? Is it the responsibility of Indianapolis? Who should take responsibility? That also shouldn't leave the ball dropped. And I think that's part of what happened here as well. So that's another change. One of the more poignant moments was also where the victims mentioned how they were treated during the course of these interviews and investigations. And that's another thing that the FBI really needs to work on here, which is to make sure that people who are properly trained take these kinds of interviews. They don't do it over the phone, and that especially with minors, the proper protocols are followed.
We talked about these two individuals who are no longer, with the FBI, and whether it comes down to them. But I think it's important to try and tease out why they dropped the ball on this. Was it because they thought, hey, this isn't that serious? Was it because they had some strange sympathy to Larry Nassar or the organization, the administration? I mean, I feel like that's a crucial piece of it, not only just who dropped the ball, but why, because that could sort of suggest larger sort of culture issues about the Bureau or about the investigators.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And I think that, there's some ways in which the report goes over some of these issues, but some of these issues were also part of the decision, not to further prosecute these two individuals. So the Department of Justice decided not to pursue a prosecution, even though it was determined that these two individuals lied to the Inspector General investigators. There are a lot of determinations that go into that question of whether to prosecute somebody or not, but unlike the report, it's a bit of a black box. So we don't get to see what was it that prosecutors decided. Why did they decide not to pursue this as a criminal case against these two individuals? And that's a major question that may remain unanswered. And I think that could probably be quite frustrating, both to the accusers and the victims who came out today, and also the others who were really victimized as a result of this delay. The 70 others who supposedly were victimized during the course of that 1 year delay in which the FBI was not pursuing the case.
Right, and you're saying that those two individuals are not part of this congressional testimony. Are they being questioned?
Well, most certainly when there was a decision whether or not to pursue this case, the Department of Justice would have gone through multiple different avenues in order to determine whether it was appropriate to charge them criminally. And I imagine one of those was to interview the individuals, or at least through their lawyers, in order to get a sense of what was going on here. But, another thing to keep in mind is, there are two possibilities. One is the Department of Justice determined that, given the kinds of cases that they normally prosecute for lying to federal officials, this didn't really rise to that level. Another possibility is they felt that they couldn't prove that case. And so we really are going to remain, we won't know that. We really won't. We do know that at least one of those individuals had what seemed to be a very troubling conflict of interest, in that he was interviewing, or said he was interviewing, or was trying to interview with a job with the Olympics Committee. And that, does seem quite troubling, because it gives a motivation. But again, without all of the facts, we're left here to speculate with the, dribs and drabs of information that we get from the Inspector General's report that isn't as full as whatever it is that the Department of Justice would have looked into in making this determination.
Well, let's hope the changes that FBI Director Christopher Wray has said the department is instituting, let's hope that those changes work going forward in cases like these. Rebecca Roiphe, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.